Hey, this is the Connected Life Book Club. We are currently in season 4. This is the final, well, not the final week, but the final week, so to say.
Yeah.
We're Summer and Candace, and this is the last weekly discussion guide. So we're finishing up the book, chapters 15, 16, and 17. And then next week, we will do the overall book podcast, which is quite a bit longer, and we kind of go more in depth on our personal feelings on the book as a whole. But right now, we're going to dive into some of the chapters. So in chapter 15, the question here, Summer, says, while not always without consequences, true confession is good for the soul. Without having to share specifics, when have you experienced this kind of healing and freedom? Is there someone you need to confess to now?
It's funny. I'm reading this. I'm like,
does that feel like a landmine
I'm
or
like,
what?
whoa, this is a big question. And there's a lot of pieces to that. And this goes deep fast. And then I'm like, I wrote it. So I guess I only have myself to blame. I guess when I wrote this, I did have, specific thoughts in my brain about this. It was a decision that I know for me, I made pretty early on when I became a Christian at 22. It's like in my story, like I thought I was a Christian when I was younger. Like I did everything I was supposed to do. I went to church, and then I had a falling away really, really hard for a bunch of years. And then coming back, I had just seen God show up in such ways that I realized like, I can't fake it anymore. And so for me, I went through this point of decision-making where I'm like, I'm going to be honest, even if it hurts, like as much as is appropriate in my setting. And so I've really tried not to hold things back, even on air. I probably overshare a lot, but I try to be as vulnerable as I can and as honest as I can, because I've seen how that has played out. And so when he's talking about like him and his wife not sharing those like real open, hard, honest talks until they'd been dating for 2 years, that blew my mind. I mean, like I couldn't believe that they'd gone that long without having a real heart-to-heart, honest confession discussion. Like, I guess I'm like, that's date 2 material. But
that's funny.
I think that the time that I've experienced, probably the most healing in confessing was first to my mom. When I decided to go to Bible college, it was something that I really felt strongly that I was supposed to do. And then I was so terrified and I was so unqualified and I doubted it. And that day, as I'm touring the college with my mom and my sister, I just felt the enemy just be like, who are you kidding? Look at you. You don't belong here. If they only knew, and just all of this stuff. And so we sat down for lunch after the tour, and I just felt like I needed to be honest with my mom. Like she knew aspects of my story and what I'd been doing. I mean, I was still living in her house. Like she had a picture, but she didn't know. And as bad as she thought I was, she had no idea. So I sat there over lunch and I just confessed. And I told her like every bad thing I'd ever done, every drug I'd ever tried, every mistake I'd ever made. And she just sat looking at me in the cafeteria of the Moody Bible Institute, which is one tear streaming down her cheek.
Oh,
and
that is heartbreaking.
But she, like on the tail end of that tear, she just praised God for how far I'd come and what he'd saved me from. And so I think just understanding that kind of grace, those voices in my head, they canceled out, and I felt this peace, and I felt like it was okay, and my story could be a testimony. And then I confessed to my husband, and I felt like I almost was trying to shock him because he was so vanilla, like little pastor's kid, never got in trouble. And I'm like throwing stuff at him. And for the first time in my life, in the eyes of someone I had dated or was interested in, I just saw Christ. Like he looked at me just unfazed. And I shared some shocking stuff with him. And he's like, but that's not who you are anymore. When you know Jesus, you're a new creation, and that's it. And that's what it's been for him. And so I think those two relationships, the two most important relationships in my life, confessing and having that kind of grace and acceptance and love despite it all, was one of the most healing experiences of my whole life.
Wow. Oh, and it's like, it kind of, honest to God, makes me a little sweaty just thinking about it. Because I'm sure, like, as you're looking at your mom and you're going, oh no, oh no, I'm too far in already,
Still
you
going
know,
back,
and
yeah.
things just keep pouring out. Oh, that is definitely a crazy feeling.
When does that
Oh, my
happen for you?
word.
When has that kind of freedom been felt by you?
Yeah. So there's like one specific situation where just a couple years ago, it was a couple months into Andrew and I's marriage, where there was something in my heart. I just felt the need to confess to him. And honestly, in my mind, I had kind of justified it away in so many different ways that I didn't really even think it was that bad, quote unquote, you know? But there was something in my heart that's just like, you need to say something. You need to say something. You need to tell him. And so I did. And his reaction was so heartbreaking. And it hurt him in such a deep way. But I also know that that's kind of exactly what I needed to see to realize that this isn't something that I can continue to explain away. You know, that this was a sin in my life that I had to face head on and really deal with, and have somebody like Andrew, somebody so deeply important that I care about in such an unending way, keep me accountable, you know, because I just never wanted to hurt him like that before or like that again. And so that was something where it's like, I think I had to grow into the freedom and peace that brought. But in the moment, what I needed to experience was how my actions affected others. And, you know, and that was something that I think just growing as a married couple, we really needed to see. I did have another moment that was probably 6 or 7 years ago now, where I felt like I was living two lives, you know, and again, didn't necessarily feel like what I was doing was so bad, but the fact that I would like keep some of my activities quiet, you know, I wouldn't necessarily tell my family about, or I would kind of shape the story just a little differently for whoever I was talking about, or leave out specific details that I would then build up in other communities or relationships, was just not the person I wanted to be. And so I just kind of had this moment where I was like, you know, God put it on my heart. I think it was through a Beth Moore Bible study, to just live genuinely, to live honestly. And so I kind of just had to decide, you know, God, I'm going to trust you when I take off the mask. And that was so difficult, but the change that it has had in my life is so significant. Because even if it's not a big deal, the fact that I was trying to be something different for someone else was my biggest red flag of like, why? You know, what is the guilt, the shame? You know, is it how you think that person is going to view you? Is it how you really want to be? Or is it shame that you've experienced in the past that's keeping you from being truly open? You know, or is it, you know, should you not be doing these things? And so I kind of had to, it was like a years long process to really look at every aspect of my life and think, why wouldn't I want to say that? Why would I change my story in that way? Why, you know, would I not want that picture to be posted on Facebook? And so I think that, it was definitely a transforming time. So we kind of both skipped over this question, but it is the second part of the question. Is there someone you need to confess to now?
I don't know. Like, there's nothing that, I mean, in complete honesty, there's nothing that kind of bubbles to the surface right now. And I think it's just because I've been over the last years working so hard to not kind of keep that kind of stuff buried anymore. There's been times in my life where I definitely felt that duplicity like you're describing. And I would have run from this question because it's like, I don't even want to think about that, because of course there is. Right now, I can't think of anyone specific, but I will sit with that longer. What about you?
I think for me, things that bubble to the surface are ways that I can think of two specific situations with different friends that I still consider friends, but there is like some sort of conflict, some sort of like unsettled heart, whether it's situational or just like something that needs to be worked out between us that just is kind of there. And I haven't brought that to them, So I do think that that's kind of on me to be more honest about either the situation where they made me feel really bad and I, have harbored resentment or bitterness because of it, but then to their face will be kind of happy and, oh yeah, no big deal. And I think part of it is I've just been working through that hurt and trying to figure out, okay, what is the right way to deal with this conflict? But I do think that it comes down to confession because my bitterness is just as sinful as the way that they hurt me, and that's something that I've like really had to deal with because part of me just wants to cut out the closeness, cut out the, ways that we were good friends before and just kind of keep moving on with this very vanilla kind of acquaintanceship. But these people are Christians, and I don't want to hurt the family of Christ with my bitterness. So I think that's probably something that I have to deal with.
Yeah. Well, and it's like he says, he's talking about hiding and keeping things in. And honestly, it just felt like a very good parallel to what we're going through right now with COVID-19 and quarantine. But he says, stick us in a dark room by ourselves and we may limp along for a week or two, but eventually we're destined for a shriveled place next to the trash receptacles. We're made to stick it out, not alone in the shadows, but to live in the light. And so I feel like when we do have those things, those secrets that we're keeping, even if it is like, yeah, they hurt me, they have no idea the thoughts running through my head when we're together, eventually just eats away at you. And yeah, there was so much in this chapter that was so, so good.
So much. I personally felt like, thank you. Somebody said it when he told the story of the blog that he wrote called My Porn Clock. And the thing that really spoke to me was people's response, because this is 100% how I feel being in the public eye. I mean, both you and I are on air. We share bits of our lives. We try to be very vulnerable. We try to share things so that other people that might be going through something similar know that they're not alone. And wow, can some people really put you over the fire for it every once in a while. And it can be so hurtful that it makes you scared to share and it makes you scared to be vulnerable. And so when he was talking about the fact that he got hundreds of emails and comments of people saying he's not a Christian or he should be ashamed,
and he didn't even say he was struggling. He just said like, I do this to keep myself from being tempted into a place where I am struggling, and that people would persecute him for that. It just blew my mind and made me so sick and sad. And I totally agree. And that's our biggest fear. And like it said in here, it's our fear of confession isn't so much that we're afraid God's not going to love us, but we're afraid of the reaction of crappy people. What else?
You're not wrong.
My gosh, yeah.
Well, and the funny thing is we all have our own level of being a crappy person. We all have our own level of where we hear something and go, oh my word, like something that maybe we've never struggled with, something that maybe we did struggle with, but got over. And now it's like, how could you still be dealing with that? We're over it. But like, everybody's on their own journey and whatnot. I mean, I did read the first story that he shared about the husband cheating on his wife to my husband and was like, you have to read this story. And he's like, that is crazy. He laughed really hard at the woman breaking her foot from kicking his shin, because he's like, that is just something you would do. Like I could see that, not that we struggle with that at all, but I would say if anything, he is on the like maybe being super judgy side of somebody in a relationship that would be struggling with that, because that's like a very personal, deep hurt for him that he's experienced in dating relationships. And so yeah, it was just interesting to like talk that out and think, okay, well, where are the areas where we might be putting shame or like keeping other people's secrets hidden with our own reaction?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think that, we're probably so afraid of being judged by crappy people because we are crappy people in the same regard in different areas.
So true. Yeah, his last line in that chapter was great, though. God's grace is the water and the light. Before we know it, we'll find flowers growing through the cracks. Which is just so sweet.
Oh,
so sweet.
All right, chapter 16. Right? The question here is where have you been able to find joy in something that went wrong? And when have you struggled with this?
Ooh, girl. I've actually, like, especially lately, and I don't know if it's because I just have a lot more time to think or what's going on, but I have just been, this is my mental picture. I'm slapped by the shame boomerang.
Just keeps coming back and back.
That's like, it does. It keeps coming back, or it's these moments where something went wrong. And even if in the moment it didn't seem like that big of a deal, my dwelling on it, my thinking about it, I wish I could have changed that. Oh, if I would have just done this, if this just would have happened, just eats away at my soul. I mean, that is probably one of the biggest mental health struggles that I have right now, is like anxiety for things that have already happened. Just knowing that they happened and knowing that I can't change them. And I don't know how to get over that per se, but I guess there are some things that I find joy in that went really wrong. Okay, so one thing, and this is not my wrong, so I guess I can laugh at it because it's not my mistake, which is of course always how it works. But at my wedding, I don't even know if I've shared this story before. I probably have, but at my wedding, my dad and I are waiting as the ceremony starts. We're waiting kind of behind the scenes, and he's pacing and he goes, I do, because he's practicing for his one line. Who gives this woman to be married to this man? And so he's literally practicing these two words. I do. And then he kind of switches it up. Her mother and I do. Is that good? Should I do that? Her mother and I do. Yeah, I might do that. That's pretty good. So we're both pacing. So we're both nervous as all get out. So we walk down and, you're overwhelmed, of course, by the amount of people that are there that that you love, and, all eyes on you in that moment. And the pastor says, who gives this woman to be married to this man? And my dad goes, Cindy, my mom and me and her mom do. And it was I don't even remember. How do I not remember that? I don't know how you forgot that, because that is something we still talk about. And oh my gosh. And it was just so perfect, because everybody that knows my dad knows that that that's him, and he laughed. And the best picture is my dad and I solemnly kind of walking up to the altar. And then literally the next picture is we're both bent backwards in laughter, just a roar escaping. And for me, that is one of my favorite memories from my wedding. But for my dad, he was pretty embarrassed by that. And he's not really one to dwell, from what I know of him. Who knows what's really going on in his mind. But that's something that, I could see just kind of haunting you as something that went wrong. And so, I don't know. I'm trying so hard to look at things from that other perspective. The things that go wrong are the things that you remember. And so you can either remember it well or take that regret with you.
Yeah.
So I don't have an answer really, but it is something that I struggle with for sure. What about you? Have you ever been able to find joy in something that went wrong? And when have you struggled with it?
I think similarly, where I can find joy, like circumstantially things not going well, it's so much easier for me to look for those positives. And it's something that, again, since I think coming back to the Lord, I've really been kind of working toward is like, what are the silver linings? What are those positive things that can come out of this? Even when, Aurelia was in the hospital and we didn't know what happened, I would be so surprised at like, Lord, I didn't think I'd be able to handle it as well as you are allowing me to handle it. And here's the good things. Man, what a great hospital. Man, what a great staff. The prayer of my coworkers in the lobby today. The fact that we have family close by. Like I would just start going through this list of just, these are the positive things. Here's how I can find joy. But where I really struggle is in any way where I personally feel like I failed. Whether I have failed myself or way worse, when I feel like I have let somebody down and I've had to have that like, I'm disappointed conversation. Oh, it will keep me awake because I'm such a people pleaser and I'm just constantly working on that and not doing very well. But so when I have to, like, whether it's something at work that I screwed up or I forgot to do, and goodness knows that happens, or, something in my life where it's like, or could it be like a genuine sin thing that I did wrong and I got caught in, oh gosh, I just want to throw up. Like, I can't, I don't handle that very well. And so for those things, they will wake me up in the middle of the night. I will not stop thinking about it. But if it rained on my wedding, which it didn't actually, it was a very beautiful day. Or if, things went wrong like that, or even, times where I found myself out of a job and I didn't expect to be like, I'm much better when it wasn't a direct result of my own personal failure. I can usually shrug those things off. And like, I'm not very good at volleyball. Like he's not very good at golf, but man, I really enjoy playing volleyball. So like in those kind of things, but whenever I feel like I failed myself or someone else, that keeps me up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's when the expectation is so high, and whether it's personal or somebody else has it for you. And, because when you're bad at volleyball and you play it, the expectation's low. Anything above, hitting the ball is a gold star, basically, at that point. And so yeah, I totally agree with that. I like that what he shared in here is, he says, I like the idea that God may actually call me to try things that have no point other than to remind me that I'm not the greatest.
Oh, and he does that.
Amen. Yes. Amen. I mean, because part of me thinks, oh, that's a little malicious, to be honest. Like, look at you. See, can't do it on your own. But at the same time, I can totally remember times when I was like a young child begging to do something. My parents go for it. Let's see how this turns out, because they just knew I had to learn the lesson the hard way.
Well, and I love what he said. He goes, God was way less interested in me playing good golf and was much more interested in me playing bad golf well. And so it's like our performance is never what pleases God. It's how we respond in the midst of, our failures. And I remember getting to the point as a parent where it's like, what, the best example I can set for my kids is not how to live perfectly, but how to fail well. And letting them see that, we're not perfect, but how do we respond when we screw up? Do we pretend like, oh, you can't call me out, I'm your mom? Or do we ask for forgiveness and genuinely confess even to our children our weaknesses? And there's so much freedom in that. In acknowledging I'm not going to get it right all the time. I'm not a perfect person, and surrounding ourselves by those grace-filled relationships that will weather that. And it's been a process. I'm a work in progress, may never be finished.
Oh, honest to God, I need to read that chapter again. Because even as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was really good. I'm like reading the underlined points that I caught the first time. I'll go, oh yeah, no, I should actually read that again. Yep. All right, so in chapter 17 here, Mike defines calling as the place with the world's, wait, what now? Mike defines calling as the place with the world's hunger meets our deep gladness collide.
Where defines calling is a place where the world's deep hunger meets and wow. Okay, hold on. One more time. Mike defines calling as the place where the world's hunger meets our deep gladness. I really slaughtered that sentence. If any of y'all are reading it on the study guide and you were as confused by that line, basically it's a place where the world's hunger meets and our deep gladness meets it, whatever. They collide. Boom. Big explosion.
Oh, my word. You know, since we're just talking about when things go wrong.
I proofread it and everything, just not very well. So where the world's hunger and our deep gladness collide.
That's amazing.
What is something God may be calling you to? Have you ever thought you were called to something in the past only to change your mind later?
Okay, so I get that first sentence, but I also don't even think we need it. So let's just skip to the questions. Okay, so what's something that God may be calling you to? Have you ever thought you were called to something in the past only to change your mind later? Okay, great questions. Sorry, I'm processing because I did not read those questions ahead of time either. So here we are. So do you have an answer because you have had a little bit more time?
All right. The reason I included that first line, or tried to, is I love that definition. Because we as Christians work so hard. And this book, even the title, I feel like it all is kind of coming back to what this chapter is saying. It's like, how do we know what God is calling us to do? And how do we accept that? And what does that look like? And we spend so much time trying to discern this. And he's saying, look, it's where what you're passionate about and what the world needs meet. And I remember going to Bible college and I'm sitting in class and the teacher to this class of freshmen, he's like, there's no such thing as a calling. And everyone got so mad at him. And he spent the rest of the semester like defending that. But yeah, like our specific vocation or what it is or who it is we're supposed to marry, et cetera, is not necessarily something that God has just so carefully outlined. And it's our mission to discover his will for us. But it's like acknowledging, how's he made you? That's cool. What do you like to do? And how can that be used to serve the world in a need that the world has? And so for me, I have felt, I'll answer this backwards. When I first became a Christian, I really thought I was supposed to be a missionary in Africa because, I'm a brand new Christian and that's what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to go to Africa and do missionary work. So that's what I went to school for and everything, only to realize that it's like, this, as I continued on, doors weren't opening. I wasn't being fulfilled by the program. And I really felt like I was failing God. Like I'm like, this is what I was supposed to do. And this is just another thing I'm giving up on, God. But to realize that I could do the things that I love, like acting and storytelling, et cetera, to serve him. And so realizing that telling stories that point people to Jesus is something that people need. And so realizing that I could serve him in that way was where I really found what I was called to do and felt confidence in that for the first time. And in many ways, what we do is still missionary work. We're reaching people. We're media missionaries. And so for me, it was just that adjustment. I've had a lot of dreams come and a lot of dreams go. But that specific calling, like I am meant to be a missionary in Africa, did not pan out. And me accepting that change was a big step in my faith walk.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would say that as far as dreams go, I don't have many dreams. I know that sounds like a weird thing, but I would consider myself a very practical person and pretty content. I would say that I'm content in most situations. And I've even been called out by friends who say, Candace, look at your car. It's a piece of crap. You can have something nicer. Like you can make more money. You can do, bigger things. And I'm just kind of like, that's like a foreign language to me. I don't really get that. And so to have like God calling me in a direction for me literally looks like God kicking me out the door. Like this place is no longer hospitable for you to live. You have to move on to the next thing. And so whether that's graduating and going to college, or, finding out that my first radio job did not have a full-time position for me, and they could not continue to pay me. It's like, oh, well, I guess I better find something, like it's literally like a kick in the back more than anything of like, time to go, little bird, get on your way. And so I really, really resonate with a lot of what he says. Is it's more about the way we do things and less about the things that we do. I felt it. I don't know. I really connected to the way that he broke down the prodigal son story as well. When, the son who's doing all the right things is saying, well, here I am slaving away for you. Where's my fattened calf? But then the son who spoiled it all, who followed his heart and did all things that made him happy or things that were pleasurable. He kind of says, if we go for the passion or self-fulfilled life only, we may find ourselves quite far from the sort of life that God intends. So I appreciate the balance there, and that God's calling for your life may align or, will align with what you're good at because that's how he made you, but it's not always going to be pleasant.
But if we
yeah. So I was kind of,
I think that there are things though that we assume, like, if I'm working for God, I've got to be like struggling, where it's like, no, like really, if God made you passionate about something and you really enjoy it, it's okay. Like he says, simply doing the thing you were uniquely wired to do to bring glory to the one who made you to do it is essentially your calling. And it's okay, I think, to enjoy your ministry. And we have this martyr mentality a lot, that if I'm serving God appropriately and I'm not having fun, if anything, that makes my service more valuable because I'm doing it anyway.
Sure. Yeah, the martyrdom.
But, I mean, reality is, it's like, hey, this might not be what you were called to do. God made you passionate about things. How can you use those things to serve him? Not just what you think you're supposed to. Like, you don't just have to go be a missionary in Africa because that's what Christians are supposed to do. There has to be more to it.
So are you saying right now that you're the older son and I'm the younger son? Because your eye-opening moment is like, things can be fun, and my eye-opening moment is life isn't always fun.
I actually spent most of my life as the other son, and but I think in college, me realizing, like, look, you just struggling through and accepting that you're supposed to be doing this thing, like, that's not necessarily God's plan for you.
Right.
And it's okay to have something that you really enjoy be how God uses you. And it's an interesting thing that you even have to think of it that way. But it is a struggle for some people.
Right? Yeah, that's funny, because I even kind of like, I had that thought process when I was dating, was I had to, at one point, when I was talking to my friends, they were like, you deserve somebody who is a Christian, a man of God, and hot. Like, I genuinely, in my mind, those things were like mutually exclusive. Which probably just goes to show the kind of, guys that I had found. But like, but I think that kind of sums things up, right? Like they don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can really enjoy.
You can be attracted to your partner. It's
right.
Oh, that's funny. That's good.
Yeah, whatever. And part of that's my dad's fault, because he's like, you're gonna pick the nice guy someday. You're gonna pick the guy that's doing the right thing. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, I will pick that guy, but kind of resigning to the fact that he's not going to be the most good looking. Which I got both. What up? Anyway.
Oh man, what I feel like. Okay. For those of you who have listened for more than one season, all of these weekly podcasts have been so much longer than what we normally do, because I feel like this book has had so much to it. And so next week's going to be interesting. Honestly, Candace, I have no idea, because there's so much to talk about as far as like the book as a whole. But we hope that you've enjoyed this.
I think the only reason The only reason it's not going to be super long is just because we forget
and because we've covered so much.
You know, I mean, yes.
We hope that you've loved this book as much as we have.
Sure.
We've been having a lot of fun with it. But we do have one more podcast coming, the overall thoughts. So if you have been sitting with like a burning question, you're like, I just really want to know, let us know what questions you were left with, how this book has affected you. We'd love to include that in our final podcast. And of course, go on Facebook and engage with us directly, engage with each other directly there as well. If you have not officially signed up to join us, go to connectedlifebookclub.com. Everything that we are exploring is archived from every season of every book we've studied, so you can access it there anytime, connectedlifebookclub.com.